Hey ho, Ramones fans, and welcome to Pinhead Pod. I am your host, Dave Dynasty. What I aim to do is provide you with the top Ramones podcast available. I saw that there seemed to be a shortage of Ramones podcasts out there and decided there needed to be one which featured news, history, interviews, deep dives, and more. So I am going to strive to provide Ramones fans that very podcast. The show is available on all major podcast platforms, and if we're not there yet, we soon will be. The show is all over social media. It is pretty much on all the platforms. Just search for Pinhead Pod, and you will find us there. So let's dive into the meat of the matter. Let's first talk about news for the month of February. Of course, what seems like the never-ending Ramones news is the legal battles between Linda Ramone and Mickey Leigh. The latest wars have often centered around the proposed Netflix film, which is an adaptation of Leigh's book, I Slept with Joey Ramone, which, the film was supposed to be starring Pete Davidson. The film was being developed until Linda filed a lawsuit against Mickey Leigh and former Ramones Productions Incorporated director David Frey, stating that they covertly developed an unapproved and unauthorized Ramones-based biopic. A judge ruled that Frey had to be removed as RPI director and could not be reelected to that post for 5 years. Now, this is a big hit against the Netflix movie. Since the removal of Frey, former band drummer Richie Ramone has been named to the board of directors. And also, since Frey has been removed, he has filed a defamation lawsuit against Linda Ramone after she accused him of threatening to leak a sex tape of her. We will have to see what develops next for RPI given the recent board changes. All right, now let's transition on to dates in history for the Ramones for the month of February. On February 4th, 1980, the album End of the Century was released. It is the band's fifth studio album and was released on Sire Records. The album was produced by Phil Spector, and it was the highest U.S. charting Ramones album, peaking at number 44 on the Billboard 200. On February 13th, 1983, Richie Ramone played his first show with the Ramones in Utica, New York. Richie was hired after Marky Ramone was fired from the band due to his alcoholism. February 19th, 2002, Joey Ramone's solo album Don't Worry About Me was released. It was Joey's first solo album. It was released almost 10 months after he passed away. It was released on Sanctuary Records, produced by Daniel Ray, and the album peaked at 109 on the U.S. Billboard 200. On February 23rd, 1983, Subterranean Jungle was released. It is the band's seventh studio album, was once again released on Sire Records. The album was produced by Richie Cordell and Glenn Collington, and the album peaked at number 83 on the U.S. Billboard 200, with critics mostly praising it as they returned to the band's early style. So there you have it, the Ramones dates in history for February. Now, coming up, this episode's guest, Monte A Melnick, who was the Ramones tour manager for most of their 22-year touring career. He also released the definitive book on the Ramones titled On the Road with the Ramones. That interview is coming up right after this break. If you like horror movies, be sure to check out Dave Dynasty and Ike Isaacs on the Listen to Their Screams Horror Podcast. It is available on all podcast platforms and on social media at Listen to Screams. That is Listen, the number 2, and Screams. All right, and welcome back here on the Pinhead Pod. I'm joined this time by a former tour manager for the Ramones and author of the book On the Road with the Ramones, Monte A Melnick. Monte, how are you?
Hey ho, let's go.
That's right. There we go.
Here we go.
We will precurse this by saying, most, if not of all this discussion that we're going to have and the stories and whatever else are in your book, On the Road with the Ramones, but obviously with a lot more details, a lot of pictures, and a lot of quotes, a lot of all that. So if anybody, this sparks, an interest, I definitely suggest they go out and get your book.
I was lucky enough when I did my publisher let me put in a lot of pictures, posters, tour passes, over 300 images. Usually a book has text, some pictures in the middle. They did a really great art director. Let me put in tons of, I had room full of stuff, posters, tour passes, et cetera, et cetera. And they let me put it in, and they did a great job. Even the background with the text, they put in a lot of background colors and stuff. So it's very a great book to just to look at.
It is, yeah. Even if I mean, yeah, just thumbing through, it's gorgeous. I mean, there's so much stuff, and I would venture to guess that's probably only a tip of the iceberg of the stuff you've got. Probably, it's a
It's good for the punk rock audiences. You don't have to read it; just look at the pictures.
there you go. Well, we like I said, I wanted to give everyone just kind of an overview of you, your relationship with the band, and because you were there. I mean, you often been called the fifth Ramone. Uh,
Uh,
and
well, I don't like that. Actually, Mark
nope,
is the fifth, and Richie's the sixth, and CJ's the seventh, and
yeah, okay,
maybe ninth or tenth. Me, Arturo, and myself. You know, I don't like to
right,
be.
but
Actually, Marky's the fifth Ramon. If you want
okay,
to,
I gotcha. I
I know
understand.
I
Yeah,
like the people like to call me that, but I just
yeah.
like to put it straight there. You know.
Well, I mean, yeah, because but you were always there, right? I
Actually,
mean,
yeah, I'm the only one left alive today that was there
yeah,
from the beginning of the Rose to the end.
yeah,
Arcturus was there, but he's passed away, unfortunately. You know,
that's
he was
right.
there
Yeah.
for the whole run along with me, and now
Hmm.
basically I'm the only one left that was there from the beginnings to the end, which is
Yeah.
there's some wood I'm gonna.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, and to be honest though, you even go back really to before the beginnings, right? You go back to the school days with these guys.
Well, yeah, well, I grew up with Tommy Ramone. I went to
Yeah.
junior high school with Tommy. I went to high school with Tommy. I saw Tommy play in high school with the Tangerine Puppets when Johnny was on bass and during a talent show in 1966.
Phew.
And I was very good friends with Tommy, and he convinced me to pick up a bass. And I joined a couple. Was in a couple of bands with Tommy, actually,
Yeah.
Tommy Ramone
Yeah. So what were
or the
those guys?
Ramones.
What were Tommy and those guys? What were they listening to back then in high school and middle school? And
Oh, everything. The best thing about it is we had the Fillmore East here.
right. Yeah.
That was a terrific venue. Everything played there. Sam and Dave, The Who, Frank Zappa. So we went there quite a bit as
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
So it was great. And we also went to a lot of clubs on the island. They had a diverse listening music. Different stuff they like to listen to.
Yeah. I think I saw a quote where you said that you and Tommy saw Hendrix there at the Fillmore East.
Yes.
And
Well,
that's
actually,
wild.
both Jimi Hendrix. Actually, that was at Hofstra.
Oh,
No,
okay.
not Hofstra. Well, a university in town. We saw him.
Yeah, that's crazy. And yeah, like you said, you were a musician as well. And later you were in a band called 30 Days Out, which
Yeah,
was a kind of a country rock type, right? And
yeah, it's quite
released
different.
released a couple of records.
Yeah.
And you opened for some major acts at the time. What was tell me what that was like? I mean that's an experience there on its own, even
Well,
before the Ramones. What was
well,
that
yeah,
like?
I had, Beach Boys, Quicksilver Messenger Service, a couple other bands like that. It was a, great experience. It was total different, country rock band, total
Yeah.
different experience than the punk rock stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, a little
actually,
different.
the first band I was in with Tommy was a three-piece group, kind of like Hendrix, like a
Hmm.
power trio.
Hmm.
And then I got together with these people into 30 Days Out. Tommy was almost in the band with 30 Days Out, but they didn't need an extra guitar player. And they
Yeah.
did a couple of years, 71, 72 with that. And then that broke up. And then I joined Tommy back when the glam rock days was phasing into punk rock. And there was a group called Butch, which
Mm.
was like a little harder, more glam punk rock stuff. But Jeff Salem was in that group. He was in Tough Darts.
Yeah.
And different stuff there.
Yeah, there was that period there in New York, right? Where I mean, glam rock was it. It was that's where it was starting, and some of the guys dabbled, right? They dabbled in the damn glam rock a little bit,
Well, yeah, if you look at
and
some of the early shots of the Ramones at CBGB's, Johnny's wearing like satin pants and
yeah,
like and they were facing because they went to see Slade and then Bowie and all that, so they were heavily into the Dolls, of course, with the
yeah,
way
oh
they
yeah,
dressed.
yeah,
They were influenced by that, but the problem was that clothes was very expensive. The platform shoes,
yeah,
the satin pants and all that stuff. So they decided just to not wear that and wear what they were wearing in the street. Basically, it was torn jeans and leather jackets and t-shirt.
yeah. Well, now let's talk. I mean, obviously the band starts forming in '74, and like I said, you were there, and you were very instrumental early on because you helped them get rehearsal time as they were forming and whatever, right?
Well, I brought Tommy and I into my cousin was installing locks in a loft on 20th Street, 23 East 20th Street for this woman. And it was an empty loft, and she asked him if he knew anybody that could help build a rehearsal recording studio. And my cousin recommended me, and then I brought Tommy into the venture, and both of us, we designed the studio and we actually built part of it, and then we got to manage the studio. And then we have our own time for our own projects. I had my own band at the time. It was a different band. And Tommy brought the Ramones in on his time into performance studios to work on the Ramones. He just wanted to produce them and manage them.
Right,
time.
yeah.
So that's why they came into the studio, and I started working with them when they started doing showcases there. They would hire, put out leaflets and bring people down with a couple of bucks to see the band and try to get managers and record companies into the studio. So I was running a sound at the time in the studio for them. And
yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. In your book is I think, isn't there a sketch of the floor plan of the studio?
Yes. I did a little architecture, construction technology when I went to college. So I drew up the floor plan for the studio there, and then got people to help build it, and we built it, and there was a floor plan there.
Yeah, and as the band got going, I've read that Dee Dee was the first to adopt the Ramone name, the first to kind of come up with it based on a Paul McCartney thing. At least that's what the tale says.
That's true. He was saw an article that saw that Paul McCartney checked himself into hotels under Paul Ramone.
Yeah.
So he said, "Hey, Ramone, let's call ourselves Ramones." And that's how they said they decided to don't name themselves Ramone,
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating to me is obviously here we are now, all these years, right? We're talking 50 years.
Oh my God,
into the future. And it's so iconic, right? That name, that look. But what's fascinating to me is at the time like that, right? Dee Dee coming up with the Ramone name and talking to these guys. Was it one of those things where they really discussed it, or was it just like, hey, we ought to do this? They're like, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Well,
and it
was discussed, Lily. I mean, they didn't have a name, so they weren't calling themselves anything at the time when they were just rehearsing. And Dee Dee came up with the idea, and they all kind of liked the idea of naming themselves. They had to change them. It was Jeffrey Hyman was his name.
Yeah.
So he changed it to Joey like that. Johnny Ramone, Tommy Ramone Ryan, and Dee Dee Ramone Ryan.
Yeah.
Later on, Marky changed his name. He's M-A-R-C, but he changed it M-A-R-K-Y.
Yeah.
And C.J. Ramone. It wasn't Christopher Ramone, didn't sound good. So Chris Ramone, but C.J. Ramone sounded better.
Yeah.
So they liked the name. Unfortunately, in the beginning, when they first came out, people didn't understand what they thought there was some sort of like a Spanish band or cha-cha band or something, Los Ramones. That's what happened with Danny Fields when they tried to bring him down to see the Ramones. Somebody recommended go to see the Ramones at CBGs. He said, I don't want to see that Spanish cha-cha band, the Ramones. What is it? That was a problem in the beginning. People thought there was some Spanish band.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
That's why they're very big in Spain, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and they played their first show, March 30th, 74. It says the Manhattan's Performance Studios. Were you at that show?
Yeah, I was running the sound. It was a three-piece group. The March was a three-piece group.
Yep.
That's when Dee Dee was singing and playing bass, and Joey was on drums.
Yep.
And Johnny on guitar, but Dee Dee, and it was so raw in the beginning. I mean, it's like they were still learning their instruments, and Dee Dee was having a very hard time singing and playing bass. And Tommy knew that Joey had a good voice because Joey was in a group before that called Sniper, and he heard him. Joey was singing and stuff. He was also playing drums in other groups, but he knew that Joey had a really good voice. So he said, all right, pull Joey off the drums, put him in the middle. And they started looking for drummers. And that was a problem because nobody understood what they were doing in the beginning,
Yeah. Well, they said Tommy would, right? They bring in drummers. Tommy would show them what to do.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Tommy was a really guitar player. I mean, he was a great musician, but he was basically a guitar player.
Yeah.
But he sat down on the drums and developed that drum style just for the Ramones, being a guitar player playing drums, specifically playing with the Ramones, and developed that style with very specific style. And a lot of drummers point that out, that Tommy really developed that specific style. So when he left the group and Marky came in, Marky was a great drummer. He came from bands like Dust and Richard Hell and Voidoids and stuff. He's a really great drummer. But
Yeah.
he took him like a month or so to work with Tommy and the Ramones to get the Ramones style down.
Yeah. Yeah. So and so like you said, you was Tommy trying to show these guys, and eventually it was just like, well, you're doing it, you're developing it, you're the
There
best.
was
Just
there
do
was
it.
no the drummers that came in just didn't understand. I mean, they were very raw in the beginning.
Yeah.
But Tommy really Tommy's like the architect of the Ramones. He really
Sure. Of course. Yeah.
so he knew what to do, what to look for, but these drummers just couldn't figure it out. They came in, a bunch of drummers came down, they just couldn't figure it out. It was really
Yeah.
raw. If you look at some of the raw Ramones footage, it's crazy stuff there,
Yeah. Yeah. And as they're developing, right, and filling, finding their place, starting to, sort out the lineup and everything else. You mentioned, right? We mentioned they were dabbling in that glam rock look a little, and then they decided, we can't do this, right? We don't have the money. So when they decided to do that look, that's what we wear every day, right? The jeans, the t-shirts, the leather jackets, whatever. When did they decide to lean into that as their look? Was that an Arturo thing that he decided, okay, if we're going to do this, let's just do it all
No,
the way?
well, Arturo was there from the beginning, but basically Johnny and Tommy, they realized that this looked good. There was something there. There was a group image, like kind of like a gang look. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
That's another problem that we had in the beginning of the Ramones. People thought they were some sort of a gang or something. They were afraid of
yeah,
them. You know?
yeah. So who brought
So
the leather jackets into it? Who was the leather jacket
well,
guy?
they were all had leather jackets at one time or another.
Okay, all right. So was that a throw? I mean, because obviously these guys, you could tell through their entire catalog and what they had a penchant for 50s rock, right? They loved a lot of that 50s rock, surf rock, different
Oh
things.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So did the leather jackets, was that a throwback to that love of the 50s?
Marlon Brando, and
Yeah,
look in that movie, and well, no, I mean, it was just a comfortable thing that they were wearing. The motorcycle jacket was at the time was something you could wear.
yeah. Well, and back to Arturo, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
Arturo was iconic, right? He was there through the
or it's
entire run as well,
unbelievable. He was
and
incredible.
right developed the famous presidential seal logo, right? That it's all over the
Well,
world.
yeah, that happened when they were visiting Washington D.C. one time, and so I was looking around. He saw the presidential seal there, and then said, "Man," he was a great artist, a terrific artist,
Yeah,
really great lighting director, artistic director. He was there from the beginning. He loved the Ramones from day one, and was
absolutely.
there
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah,
And he developed that unbelievable and changed a few things. If you look at the Eagles holding instead of olive branches, it's an apple branches.
yep,
And instead of like arrows, it's a baseball bat. So
yep,
Arturo
yep,
brought the American, Johnny's a big baseball fan. If you look at the front
yep,
cover of my book, Johnny's wearing a Yankee t-shirt. He's a big
yep,
Yankees.
yep.
The great idea of putting the names around the conference was terrific.
Yeah,
Because it was great. When one person left, they just plugged in a new person. So that
yeah,
worked out very well.
yeah.
He was just brilliant. If you look in my book, there's a picture of him and his back. Do you see what he put in on his back? The thing on his back?
Yeah, what was yeah,
The
refresh
whole
my memory.
logo, the whole big logo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
He
it's funny.
tattooed the logo on his back,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
full size. That's how
yeah.
dedicated he was. The
And
funny little
it's
thing about that is, in it, he put Johnny, Joey, Dee Dee, Artie. At that
oh,
time, Marky was in the group.
yeah,
And Marky saw and got pissed off. Said, "Why did you put me?" So this is my back. I'm going to put my name on the back. But if you look,
yeah,
it's in my book. There's a picture of him. There's a picture of his back in the book
yeah,
there.
yeah,
So many of the
yeah,
extra pages I put in about him.
yeah. But it's funny. It's like I'm sure no one could have guessed though when he developed that what it would become.
Oh,
one of the most iconic rock and roll, whatever logo, graphics, whatever you want to call it,
a
of all
graphic
time.
thing. Yeah, yeah. A very iconic thing like CBGB's t-shirt or certain other logos that you see around. And people just picked up on it. And other
Yeah,
groups and things, other organizations picked up on it and put their own
yeah.
little thing
Oh
in
yeah,
it
yeah,
using the,
yeah.
the eagle.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to. I don't know if there's even a way to know or tell. But I have to say, probably I would guess, in my opinion, the most sold rock and roll T-shirt of all time. I mean, because to this day,
That and CBGB's, yeah.
yeah, I mean, to this day, you see them everywhere, and it's just it's nuts. And but it's also, I mean, saying on Arturo, I mean, with him being there the whole, I mean, that's a unique thing, right? For an artistic director or whatever you want to call him to be associated with the band for that long.
True.
That's very unique.
It's another thing for a tour manager to be, usually
Exactly
you
right.
go with a
Yeah.
group and you're looking for another band, you look for another band.
Yeah.
But
Well, and
they
that's
kept me on for 20 years. I
yeah.
worked with them, during the movie for videos, and that's why they kept me around. And it was good. It was lots for me to do.
Yeah. And that's something I
Besides,
want to discuss later is I think one of the keys to the Ramones' success is just that consistency, right? You knew what you were going to get. You knew when you got a Ramones album, it wasn't like they were going to venture into really odd territory. You knew what a Ramones album more or less would sound like. You knew when you went to a Ramones show more or less what it was going to sound like. Same with like an ACDC or something, right? They don't venture from what works. And how much I think a lot of that is due to that consistency with having like you and Arturo and everything around all those years. It just keeps things, I mean, flowing
that
and
helped a
keeps it.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Did you see the Ramones? Have you seen them?
yeah, well, yeah, back
Where did you see them?
it. Well, the last time I've been around the Lollapalooza stuff, so yeah,
Okay.
around yeah that time. Um, I'm only about 50. I'll be 50 next year, so they're
Happy
they're
birthday.
uh their prime years were
Happy
before mine.
birthday.
Yeah.
Enjoy it when you can.
I am. I'm trying. Well, and we mentioned CBGB's, and then on August 16th, 74, the Ramones played their first show at CBGB's
That was the first time they as a four-piece.
as a
First
four
show.
piece. Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And
50 years
and
ago.
that's right, yeah. And what
Unbelievable.
tell us, you see people talk about CBGB's, and right, they tried to make a movie of it and everything else, but tell us what CBGB's was really like at that time, and the importance in that scene.
Well, it was a dive bar, basically. It was in a horrible area at the time.
Yep.
The Lower East Side that time was Salvation Army, bums, burnt out buildings, junkies running around. There wasn't a pleasant area.
Mm-hmm.
And CB Hilly just wanted to make it what CBGB stands for, right?
Yeah, country bluegrass
Blues,
blues. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
country bluegrass blues.
Yeah.
And Omfug is other music for
Yeah.
gormandizers or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hilly was so he just wanted a country bar, but
Yeah.
at that time, Hell's Angels were hanging out there a little bit and stuff like that. It was just a CD Bowery bar. I mean, but the beautiful part about it is they let groups come in and play original music, their own music. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't care about, a lot of clubs at that time, you had to play top 40 to get a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Hilly was terrific. He's just, as long as people come in and drink, he didn't care what you played. And so that's where all the bands developed their act there.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ramones started off raw, but they played there over 70 times.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
from the beginning, they were raw, but that's how they developed their act, a little bit, a little
Yeah.
bit, a little bit, a little. And these other people that came in, Talking Heads, Blondie,
Blondie.
Patty
Yeah.
Smith, they all were
Mm-hmm.
there as friends and watching. There was mostly other bands in the club at the time, watching other bands,
Yeah. Yeah.
before it got picked up in the news and later on it got, publicity and people started coming down. Before that, it was just basically musicians there, watching
Yeah.
other musicians and working it out, working their act out. It's amazing. That's a beautiful part what that Hilly did.
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, that's probably what I think, in my opinion, right? I wasn't there. I didn't experience it, but it gave it let them develop that sound, right? That became and find their voice and everything else before they ventured out. And so we're here, they're playing CBGBs, right? We're on the cusp of that record deal. Up to that point, what is your role with the band then? You're doing sound for them and things, right? A lot because they're just sticking in that New York area.
Well,
And
I started working with them in studio there, doing the showcases. They had a bunch of showcases and their rehearsals, and I worked with them there. And then they started getting some jobs, CBGBs, and they said, come on and do some sound for them. And I started doing sound for them outside the performance studios, the CBs. And then it picked up. They started getting a job here, there, like Boston and stuff. And at that time, unfortunately, the studio had to close down because the neighborhood shut us down,
yeah,
So, but it was a good transition for me because they started getting jobs,
yeah, you're right.
here and there. So for about a year and a half, I was their first sound man before they decided to get a professional sound man. And I was doing, doing everything basically myself. Mickey Lee, which is Joey's brother,
Mm-hmm.
Arturo. We were kind of like the crew in the beginning. Just we had to do everything in the beginning,
Yeah.
The bigger they got, the more people. I worked my way up from like tour, they got a sound man and a monitor man, and then they started hiring drum roadies, guitar roadies, and I worked to road manager and later on up to tour manager.
Yeah. And,
So
and, and
little by
like,
little, it was a little, process of learning everything in the beginning and schlepping the
yeah.
equipment around and pumping stuff and driving and et cetera, et cetera. So I went through the whole gamut of stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like we said, in 75, they signed the record contract, right, with Sire Records. And they were,
Seymour Stein, the first
mm-hmm,
managers of the band was Danny Field and Linda
mm-hmm,
Stein, which is Seymour
mm-hmm.
Stein's wife.
Yep.
Of course, Seymour Stein came in, loved the band, and
Yeah.
signed him.
Yeah.
Seymour's great. He was
Yeah.
terrific. He's got
Yeah.
a great book. If you're ever interested in his for a great
Yeah.
music book, pick up his book.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that was kind of great about that partnership, right? Because they saw the Ramones, they loved the Ramones, they fell in love with it. So when they signed them and brought them in, it's like they didn't want to change a whole lot, right? They didn't
No,
they
no, they left
they
him
liked what they
alone. I
heard.
mean, anytime Seymour had a couple of suggestions. One of the songs, Blitzkrieg Bopper, about just Dee Dee grew up in Germany and
Mm,
he's born here in the United States, but I'm a Nazi Shotzi and stuff like Seymour. He's Jewish. He said no, you got to take that out. But they said no, we don't leave that in. We're just goofing around there. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Well, and that
That's
debut
about the
album,
only time that Dave he said anything. But otherwise, he just left them alone, and that's
yeah.
a beautiful part about Seymour.
Yeah.
And all the
Yeah.
groups he had on his label, Madonna, Talking Heads, et cetera, et cetera. Amazing label, Sire Records.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And then their debut album released in April 76. What a great record. I mean, to me, I'd hold it up at one of the best debut albums of all time.
Well,
And it's just,
that's what they say.
yeah. I mean, so many standards off that album that they, stuck through the career, right? I mean, when it was all said and done, album was out there. They heard, maybe a test pressing or whatever it may be. Was the band happy with what the
Oh
band,
yeah,
how the album turned out? And,
yeah.
and
They recorded that for like $6,000
I know it, unreal.
quickly, very quickly. I mean, most bands these days are going for like months into studios. There was like a couple of weeks they had it done, like maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for $6,000, and they had all the material done before because they practiced so much in the performance studios. They
Yep.
rehearsed a lot. That's
Yeah.
the beautiful part about the Ramones. They really rehearsed a lot. Even during all the years on the road, they always came back and rehearsed a couple of weeks before they went on a tour. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse.
Yeah.
People didn't realize they worked very hard at that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you listen, you can tell, right? I mean, they're a very tight band, right? I mean, it's
Even during on tour, we'd carry a little practice amp, a little
mm,
practice drum pad. They go into a room right before the show, every show, and go over like 6 or 7 or 10 songs. Joe would go into another room with a little boom box and do vocal exercises every show. They
that's
would
wild.
warm up. People would
Yeah.
were amazed that they did stuff like that. They didn't realize
Yeah.
like people thought the Ramones had 3 chords, they're simple, blah 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 blah. It wasn't
Yeah.
that simple. It wasn't that
No.
simple.
No. No.
It
No.
had to be so tight.
Yeah. Well, and also speaking of the debut album, right? The iconic photo on the cover.
Roberta Bailey.
Yeah, by
I give her
Roberta Bailey
credit.
from Punk Magazine. Uh, we talked about CBGB and letting some of these guys, develop their voice. How important was Punk Magazine in helping to support the Ramones
Yeah,
and punk in general in those days?
John Holmstrom was terrific. And his Punk magazine, and he wrote about them. He always was down. Very good friend of the band's. He was always down there watching the band at CBGB's. And the original shot was for Punk magazine.
Mm, okay.
That place there, that wall is still there. There's a little garden down
Mm-hmm.
Second Street there.
Yeah.
You can go
Yeah.
there and visit the wall, by the way.
Yeah.
And it was originally done for the Punk magazine, but the Ramones saw it and they liked it, and they took it over. They bought it out. She didn't
Yeah.
make a lot of money initially I think $150 they paid or something.
Yeah.
But now then she's selling the pictures for a lot of money. But Roberta Bailey's a great photographer. She was working at CBGB's as like on the door and stuff. She
Yeah.
took the photos and stuff.
Yeah. It's crazy to me how, again, it plays into that image they had, right? Everything was so, it's just like it all fell right into right that photo. You could see them, and it's like you knew you could get a visual. You knew when you saw that photo. It's like you grasped right a little bit what that band was going to be like
It all came
because
together.
it was just it's funny how that I don't know how that works sometimes. And but here they are, their debut album, right? And they're spearheading the punk movement, pretty much, right? Or whatever,
Well,
whatever
back
that's
then,
worth.
back then it was there wasn't called punk back
I know it.
early. I mean, there was Punk magazine, but nobody
Yeah.
called the group punk group. They didn't like the name punk rock.
I was going to ask you that.
They,
They didn't
they,
strike me
they,
as ones
they,
that,
it grew on them after a while, but
yeah,
initially, yeah, we're not punk. We were just a band playing rock and roll music, stuff
yeah.
like that.
It always reminded me of like Lemmy from Motorhead, right? Which they obviously they had a great relationship with
Oh
her
yeah,
because Lemmy would come out and he'd say, "Hey, we're Motorhead. This is rock and roll." And it's like he just thought, "Hey, we're just a rock and roll band." And
yeah.
just because we play a little louder, a little faster, it's still rock and roll.
Lemmy was
And
great. He was there for the
yeah,
last show.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
And he sang this great song that he wrote,
absolutely,
Ramones.
yep,
Unbelievable. What a great
yep,
song. That's how
absolutely.
dedicated he loved the band so much he wrote a song about them.
He did indeed, yeah. And
Unbelievable.
I wondered that. I wondered what the Ramones thought of that term punk. And
Initially, they didn't like, we were rock and roll band, punk, because the problem was the Sex Pistols kind of
yeah,
polluted stuff. You
yeah,
know, they came out and they polluted the name, and all the people said punk rock. That must be, you're going to spit and do stupid things and
yep,
anarchy
yep,
and rebellion and punk. It's horrible. And the Ramones got sucked into that. Unfortunately, that's why they didn't like the name punk.
yep,
And that's why they couldn't get played on American radio for years and years and years,
yep, absolutely,
unfortunately.
yeah,
Because the program director said, oh, punk rock, unless the Sex Pistols, we don't want them to come out to the studio doing stupid things.
yep.
I had a
Which
problem
is
on the road once. I was like checked into a hotel and looking behind the desk, and there's a little note there, what, punk band, be careful.
oh my.
You
Well, and
know,
it's funny because in the '70s, the Ramones would have fit right on the radio with with what was being played. It would have just
exactly.
perfect. Would have been perfect.
I mean, they really bugged the hell out of them that they just couldn't get over and over again. They just got
I know it.
ignored, ignored,
Yeah,
ignored, ignored.
yeah. So, I mean, did that bother them? Were they
Yeah.
wanting? I mean,
Well, I mean,
you also
they wanted to be played on the radio. They wanted to go to radio stations and stuff.
sure, yeah, but
It's a good thing the college radio stations were okay. They got there, which is great. And
yeah,
Rodney Bingenheimer and K Rock and out in Los Angeles is terrific. He picked them up
yeah,
right away, played them a little bit. But the bulk of the US radio across the country just ignored them.
yeah. So I mean, were they were bothered by the charts and not charting and not
Well,
the girl would just I mean
you
because you
wanted,
hear again that label with punk. Oh, yeah, they don't care. They're just out there to do the. I mean, but that's the Ramones never struck me as that, right? That hey, this is our
no,
business. This is our job. We want
yeah,
the bigger the better, the more money.
yeah. That's why they kept on playing. Because that was their meat and potatoes, was playing live
The
and
live show, yep,
merchandising. And
yep,
merchandising kept them
absolutely,
going for 22 years, 22 fucking years.
yeah, yeah. And so now that the album's out, right, and they're obviously going to venture out. How did your role with the band evolve as that album came out and they're starting to go out there a little more?
Well, as I said, I first started doing sound for them in the first year and a half. When they
Yeah.
went out, when the first money they got, they actually bought a PA system, a little PA system, because
Hmm.
they realized most of the clubs at that time had crappy PA systems, and
Yeah.
they realized that. Even CBGB's in the beginning didn't have the greatest PA system, but
Yeah.
Sid Haley actually really spent a lot of money in his PA system over the years, and really they had
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
terrific PA system after a while. But we initially brought in our own PA system because that's the first thing they did when they got money, got some amps and some PA system. So in the beginning, I was running the sound and doing the road work, humping and driving and working way up till
Yeah.
the bigger they got, I could hire the more crew,
Yeah. There's a
which was
yeah,
good for
there's
me because I didn't particularly like humping stuff around.
yeah. There's a great clip of Dee Dee, and I'm not sure what year it's from, where he says oh, we've got some new amps
Yeah, and they
because the
really
old amps
work.
Yeah, they really were. Yeah.
He's like hesitating. That's such a funny clip.
Yeah.
We can turn off. We can blast everybody out of here. But he's like,
Yeah.
that's Dee Dee who's thinking
Yeah.
about they really work. That's of course they work. He was
Yeah.
so unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, and like we said, right, they things weren't hitting on the radio for him, right? It was obviously that first album not performing as well. But then they went to England and things really they hit over there, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah, because
Europe was a thing.
In England, they had a lot of great NME music maker, a lot of music papers and publications, and they're not that in the United States. Cream magazine, but the heavy duty uh, music magazines in England that picked up on the Ramones right away, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
Helped a lot.
Yeah, and even to this day, right? You see, Marky out there touring and stuff. It's still European,
Well,
right? Europe tours because he's.
Marky is keeping the Ramones alive. He's the only.
Hmm.
Well, it's actually three Ramones left. Marky,
Hmm.
excuse me, Richie and CJ.
And CJ, yeah.
Marky is actually doing the Ramones. He's Marky
Hmm.
Ramones
The
Blitzkrieg.
Blitzkrieg.
He
Hmm.
does like mostly 195% Ramones songs, which is great because people still want the Ramones out there, you know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Yep,
And he's got
definitely.
a great band together.
Yep.
CJ was out there for a while doing his own album and some Ramones stuff, and Richie does his own album and some Ramones stuff. But
Yeah.
basically, Marky does the Ramones, which is and it's a big. He's touring all over the place. He's got a big market. There's people still going to see the Ramon, Marky
Yeah.
Ramone. You know,
Yeah. I think CJ's playing with the Me First and the Gimme Gimmes now.
that's amazing. Have you seen
And
that band? You know the band
yeah,
now?
I love them. They do all the covers, right? I
It's
mean,
all cover songs, but
I love
punk.
it.
So they do a
Yeah.
John Denver song, and it's a punk rock, and all of a sudden, and I went to them, and then it's like a mosh pit going on during a
It is.
John Denver song or
Oh
a
yeah.
Willie Nelson song, punk or
I love it.
whatever.
Yeah,
It's
I
all
love it.
cover song. Yeah, he's
I
found.
think,
Initially he was out there with his own albums, and
yeah,
he found touring very because he had to do everything himself, and
yeah.
found the grind and everything. So he phased out of that. He had a couple albums. That was very good albums he
They're
put
good
out.
albums. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Terrific
Mhm.
songwriter.
Yeah.
By the way, talking about just for with wrestling, he wrote the Crusher. That's Dee Dee wrote
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
Crusher,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he would sing that.
Yeah.
And they actually bought a wrestling mask for one of the crew to come out.
Yeah.
That didn't last very long because the crew didn't like wearing the mask. But
Yeah.
just a little wrestling thing there, the Crusher, by the way.
Yeah.
So CJ, after a number of years, decided to got into this band. It's terrific for him. He just goes there, they gets on the bus, and they take care of him. And
Yeah. Yeah.
they're big. They play all over
They are. Yeah. And he looks like he's having fun. And
amazing.
yeah. And having a good time. But like we said, right? Yeah, like you said.
And Richie's doing horror pictures. He's an actor.
Mhm.
He
Yep.
did a couple of horror pictures.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah. And like we said, right? The Ramones, embraced in Europe, but in the US, it's like they didn't know what to do with them, right? They didn't know what to call them. And they were opening. There was that opening for some weird bands like Black Sabbath and
Well,
Toto and Ted Nugent and
that was here in the States.
in the States. Yeah.
The problem is we had to go through a number of booking agents that didn't.
Yeah.
The early ones didn't understand that
Yeah.
they're not an opening act, really, basically.
Yeah.
For Ted Nugent and yeah,
Toto.
Aerosmith. That was in Canada actually. We
Yeah.
did a music festival, Canadian music festival, opening up for Ted Nugent and Aerosmith, and
Well,
the
in the
Ramones on
Nugent.
stage, and they was throwing like food on
Yeah.
stage, and the Ramones
Yeah.
got pissed off. They played a number of songs. They walked on stage, and there's a famous
Yep. There's
picture of them
pictures of Johnny
giving the
flipping
finger,
them off.
giving the finger to 30,000 people in the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that was okay. They're just going through, but when they opened up for Black Sabbath at the early years, people didn't know the Ramones, and they wanted Black Sabbath, and that was a rough crowd. And they were throwing hard stuff, batteries and
Mhm.
coins, and like an ice pick came up on stage, and that was rough. That was rough. So
Yeah.
the booking agents didn't understand that we couldn't. And Toto, I didn't understand that. That was
No, that makes
the
sense.
only good part about that is by the time the Ramones were off the stage, the audience woke up, so it was all
Yeah.
right.
Well, it's like you said, they really couldn't be an opening act. Who were they going to open for? There's nobody comparable.
Well,
I mean,
Lollapalooza worked out well.
well, no, yeah, but I'm talking early in those early years.
The early years
Yeah.
they're just
There's
when
just
they
no
were
one.
unknown, and the people come for the big acts. They didn't want to tolerate any
Mhm.
new stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about Tommy being kind of, the architect of the band back, just early on the backbone of the band. In '78, he quote unquote left the band, at least as a drummer, and continued to produce. And that's when Marky came in.
Right.
And and there was a few, like we said, a few changes over the years, Richie, CJ, it's wild in 22 years though, that's all they had. I mean,
There's
just
one
those,
more.
well,
There was one more
Elvis,
Ramones. Yeah, there you go.
Elvis,
Of course, he's around doing great stuff with Blondie still.
Blondie.
Blondie's
Yeah.
out there now. He's a
Yeah.
great drummer, terrific drummer.
Yeah. Oh,
That was
absolutely.
what I was trying to point out with the drummers, because when Richie left abruptly, we had a bunch of shows together. Now Gary
Yeah.
Curtis was managing a band, and he managed also Blondie and Talking Heads and other people. And Blondie wasn't doing anything, and so he went to Richie Clem and said,
Clem. Yeah.
"You could do it. It's easy playing with the Ramones. It's no problem. Don't you know?" Now he's a great drummer,
Yeah.
but he didn't have enough time. It was these shows were coming up fast. He didn't have the time to get into the groove as like Marky had like a month or two. He worked with Tommy to get that specific style going. I mean, it was
Yeah.
okay, but
Yeah.
in any Ramon song, any little glitch, it throws the whole thing off. So that was his problem. Luckily, Marky cleaned his act up and came back.
Came
And
back. Yeah.
of course, Clem made a lot of more money with the Blondie, than with the
Still,
Ramones.
still making Blondie.
Still great. Great guy, terrific drummer.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so when these guys, when they would leave though, what was the impact on the band? Did it have a lot of impact, or did Johnny and Joey just, hey, let's fill the hole and keep
Well,
charging?
when Tommy left, you talk about, they brought in Marky.
Hmm.
So it
I
was
mean, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Was it a big impact because Tommy was the guy, was there from the beginning and helped?
no, because Tommy stuck around and worked with them.
Right. Okay.
So he was there kind of like a couple of years too after, kind of guiding still and working with Mark. And Mark was a terrific drummer and worked well with the Ramones. So that
Yeah.
was an easy transition.
Yeah. Well, talk to us about Rock and Roll High School.
Ah,
The movie that the band appeared at '79.
I'm in the
Uh,
movie there briefly. You know what the part I'm in?
no, where are you in it?
All right. When you first see the band, they're in a car singing, "I Just Want to Have
Yep.
Something to Do."
Yep.
And
Yep.
Joey's eating chicken vindaloo. They pull up to the theater.
Yeah.
Watch for me. I come across the screen, open the door. They come out, and then I walk behind the band, talking to the manager. You can see me for that whole thing. They sing, "I Just Want to Have Something to Do."
Huh.
Then the whole scene, you can see me right behind Dee Dee. But
I'll have to.
I walk across the screen and open the door. You can see me in the movie there. And also,
It's
there's a
been
little
it's
cameo of me when they're chasing backstage during the hall monitors are chasing. There's
yeah,
a
yeah.
little shot of me backstage too. So I'm in the movie briefly.
So, well, how did it come up for them to be in there, right? Because I heard that they weren't the first choice, right? They were whoever the guy, I can't remember his name now, right? He wanted to make kind of that modern teen movie.
Alan Arkish.
Yes, correct. Wanted to make that
I'm
a teen movie. And
Yeah. Well,
how did it come to land at the Ramones? I heard one of the actors in the film suggested the Ramones.
uh, well, he knew about the Ramones before.
Yeah,
And originally it was Roger Corman B movie picture. He
correct.
had
There
his
you go.
back
Yeah, yep,
files. It was originally called Disco High.
yeah,
And at that
right.
time, disco's phasing out, and Alan came in and rewrote the whole movie to do it. He wanted to do rock and roll.
Yeah,
And he's a big rock fan. And he knew about the Ramones. He knew about the Ramones. He had a couple of Ramones albums early on. And then he approached Danny and Linda, and they had him come down and see the band in Haraz, and he fell in love with them.
what did the band think? What did they think of the idea? I
That was
mean,
great. It was terrific.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
the only thing they didn't like, they didn't realize when you're making a movie, you sit around for like 2 hours, and then they film for the 10 minutes, and then they set up, you got to sit around for another couple hours before they set up another scene. So a little antsy about that,
yeah.
keeping them in one spot there.
Well,
I
I have
like
to.
the whole thing. I saw the whole thing. I like to work with see what was going on. They got very friendly with all the people, PJ Souls and
Yeah,
Clint
I was gonna,
Howard was great.
yeah, I was gonna
Ronnie.
say I love the movie for whatever the faults, whatever, because obviously because the Ramones are in it and because of PJ Souls. I'm a huge PJ Souls fan from her horror stuff, being in Halloween, the original Halloween, and different things and stuff. So I love PJ Souls, and so getting to see those two together in a movie is great. So when it was all said and done and they saw the finished movie, what did they think?
They liked it. I mean, they they really thought it was great. Uh, it was great. It was terrific. You know, I think it was a great fit for them. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh yeah, yeah.
no, they enjoyed having it out. That was another problem, another mishmash. The stupid movie company that didn't release it in New York. They released it in the middle of summer in Texas or something like that. And but now it's become like a cult movie. It's become
It
like a
is.
midnight
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
It's,
Like I
it's
said, I love it. It's such a fun movie. And I mean, I gotta say, probably, I mean, I would venture to guess a way that a lot of people got turned on to the Ramones. That's
true,
some of
true.
their probably some people's first look. And
Now they didn't get paid a lot of money to do the movie. So in the middle of filming, they had a week or two off. They actually had to go out, and that's when they played with Black Sabbath
oh, okay.
because they got some opening shots in between. They had to make some extra money because they weren't paid
Yeah.
a lot to do the movie,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And the movie was only like $300,000 budget. That's like a maybe half a catering budget on a movie these days, you know.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Well, through the 80s, right? They were very busy, touring nonstop. They released 7 albums, just work, 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 work. But obviously, like we talked about, right? The touring and the merchandise, that's where they were clicking. And that's where the money was being made for them. When at what was there a point where it clicked, hey, this is where we're making our money and it is what it is? Um, and they realized they had to just stay on the road because they weren't going to have
Yeah,
that commercial
from
success.
from initially when they couldn't get played and sell a lot of albums. Excuse me. Initially, they wanted, I mean, we've talked about it earlier, but they wanted to get on the radio. That's why they started going with different producers.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
figured maybe Phil
Oh, like a
Spector
Phil
might give them
Spector.
a
Yeah.
hit,
Hmm.
get them on the radio. That didn't work. John Beauvoir, Graham Gouldman, 10cc. That's a weird
Yeah.
combination there, you know. And they wanted to get the hit, so that's why they kept on changing Richie Cordell and different people. They wanted to bring in the hits, you know, make a hit
Yeah.
and get on the radio, and just
Yeah.
over and over, and that just frustrated them.
Yeah. It's funny because I'd venture to guess as they were winding down and retiring, they were probably getting more radio airplay than they were when they were first starting of the old stuff. I mean, they're quote unquote hits. I mean, even non Ramones fans, non punk fans know Blitzkrieg Bop
Well,
and Rockaway Beach and
yeah,
that
that's on a jock rock album, Blitzkrieg Bob. Now you go
yep,
to a sports event, everybody's going, "Hey, oh, let's go."
yep. It's
Who thought of that? You
it's
know,
I mean, yeah, it's crossed into pop culture. It's beyond music now.
Johnny
And
liked that idea. He was a big Yankees fan, so he liked that
yeah,
idea of being in the stadium.
I love that. I'm a baseball fan too, but I don't like the Yankees, but I'm a big baseball fan.
Where do you live?
I'm a Midwest guy by birth, though. I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan.
Where are you now?
I'm in North Carolina. I was born
Oh,
and raised in Indiana. So
whereabouts in North Carolina?
I'm just about 40 minutes outside of Raleigh.
Yeah, my cousin just moved down there to
Yeah,
Raleigh.
yeah.
I got some
It's
good
I mean,
friends in Charlotte.
yeah. I have a sister-in-law that lives in Charlotte, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I love it. I love it here. I'm not a winter guy,
Do you know
so
Rick Johnson? He lives in Charlotte. He's a big Ramones fan, and he's
uh,
on
oh
Facebook.
yeah,
Rick
yeah, yeah,
Johnson.
yeah.
He
I know the
posts all the
name.
Ramones stuff.
I
Yeah,
don't know him personally, but I know the name. Yeah,
he's a good friend of mine, and helps me out a lot, and lives in Charlotte.
yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Huge
But
Ramones fan. Follow the
yeah,
Ramones around all over the place.
yeah.
Help me out.
Yeah. Well, and we spoke of band members leaving, right, and how to transition. But in '89, there's one that I have to imagine hit a little harder when Dee Dee left, and that's a
Well,
different.
it did, but at that time, Didi was fading out. He was like spacing out. He wasn't into it, you know.
Yeah,
He wasn't performing Pride. He was doing too much drugs. Wasn't looking very good. He wasn't into it. He said himself he wanted to get out of the Ramones army.
yeah,
So when he left, well, Johnny said, "Well, we'll find another bass player," you know.
yeah,
And they recorded about 20 different people. Actually,
yeah,
CJ was the first one to audition for them
yeah. No,
out
don't
of
get me
20
wrong.
people.
I tell you, I love Dee Dee, right? I love Dee Dee's such a talented guy, right? Brought so much, but CJ brought an energy back to
Well,
him.
that's the thing, because at the time, Didi was like fading out. and CJ came in as a young guy, so they all
Yeah.
had to kind of suck their stomachs in to keep up with him, which is good.
Yeah.
It was good for them. But a
Yeah.
good thing was Dee Dee stuck around and wrote songs for
Sure.
later. So
Yeah.
he kept on feeding them Ramones. Great Dee Dee. He was a terrific songwriter,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
he couldn't take it on stage anymore. He just wanted to get out of that and get out of the way that Johnny was controlling, basically thinking you got to look
Yeah.
like this, you got to do this on stage and that on stage, and then Dee Dee was rebelling, and he was fading out.
Yeah. Well, what did everybody think about Dee Dee trying his hand at rap when he
Well,
left?
initially they said, okay, you do your thing, put out albums, you still be in Ramones, you could do a side project, it's fine. But it got a little too much. He really got a little too much. He wanted to be really into the rapper. Like I tell the story a couple of times, like we're going to Washington D.C. on a plane, and all of a sudden he shows up at the airport in a jumpsuit and gold chains and stuff. And
Yeah.
Johnny's like, "What the fuck are you doing here? You're the Ramones still. You can't wear that stuff when joining the
Yeah.
Ramones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really want to be a rapper. He really he gave it a good shot at it. But
Yeah.
initially it was just they thought he'd just do a side project,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he'd stay in the Ramones and
Yeah.
be happy. But
Yeah.
didn't work out.
No. Well, I mean, he did kind of settle down, get back into that punk, that Dee
Yeah,
Dee
yeah,
style, did
yeah.
some stuff, and like you said, I mean, he appeared at their last concert, right? Always contributing songs, was at the Hall of Fame. I mean, he was never completely out of the universe, right? I mean, he was still floating about in the
Well,
Ramones
yeah,
world.
he was around there. He was around there. He moved. We saw him in South America because he married his wife was from Argentina and stuff like that. So he was around there. We tried to get him to
Yeah.
play the last show, one of the shows down in Argentina, but it didn't work out well.
Yeah.
He couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Well, and then in '91, right, the contract with Sire was up. And I've heard some talk, right, that Epitaph and Radioactive both wanted the band.
Yeah,
Tell me from your perspective on this story, right? Epitaph, kind of a young, right, wanted to take them, put them out with Rancid and No Effects and some of these bands, and really introduce them in front of the bands that they inspired and their crowds. And then Radioactive was, from my understanding, was kind of the same, right? Kind of what they've been doing. Johnny went with Radioactive. I heard
well,
that
well,
CJ was
well,
pushing for Epitaph.
Radioactive was Gary
The manager
Kerfurst's
is, yeah,
manager of they
his
had big
label.
sway, and Johnny says he went to Johnny, and I'll make him more money, blah blah blah. Johnny was a money guy, so he stuck with Gary Kerfurst, who had managed Talking Heads, Blondie, Big Audio, Dynamite, et cetera, et cetera. It was a heavy duty stuff there. So
Yeah,
and Johnny just stuck along with them, and so did Joey.
yeah. So, but
BJ would want to. So he was just the younger generation wanted to go with the younger people.
yeah, yeah. You have to wonder in retrospect what would have happened, had they went with Epitaph and done a little more. And I don't know. I mean, maybe they wouldn't have made it as much money. I mean, I don't. You can't tell. I mean, it's hard to second guess this stuff.
Yeah,
But
you never know.
no, yeah, So tell us, you were there, you experienced it all those years. What was the relationship like between Joey and Johnny? Because for us
Well,
on the outside who didn't know them, they seem like very opposite kind of people. But yet they always worked together, right? They put
well,
business ahead. So
yeah.
what was that like?
Initially they were friends. They grew up together in
Right.
Forest
Yeah.
Hills, and they rehearsed together. And the first band they started together, and they were friends in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Just later on, when Johnny got together with Linda, that
Mm-hmm.
put a little friction there. You know what I mean?
Of
But
course.
that happened. A
Yep.
lot of rock bands had that happened to
Yep.
them.
Yep.
Different
Of course.
girlfriends. But they realized. I mean, they were friends in the beginning, but later on, that the friction came, and they decided they didn't socialize. It was the music, and the live shows, because there's a feedback. Do you play an instrument? Are you a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
musician?
Guitarist. Yep.
When you're on stage, you're getting a feedback, and it's a high.
Mm-hmm.
There's a high going on when you come off stage. You're if it's a great show and there's a big crowd and you're high. That's why a lot of musicians kind of turn to drugs afterwards and drink to keep that going, unfortunately.
Yep. Yep.
So they realized they had that going. They had the music going. They wrote songs. They just didn't socialize. They had to keep it separate.
Yep.
which just kept them together. I mean, how many marriages last 20 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
22 years.
So,
So they
so
kept it was a bit tight, but it wasn't that people said they never talked to each other. No, they
sure.
just limited amount of, they set lists and songs to play during the album, what to record and stuff like that, and it's different schedules. But in the van or in the bus or whatever, they just didn't. They separated. They kept it apart and didn't talk
So,
much.
did Johnny pretty much handle the business side of the band?
Yeah, well,
And
he was like kind of the general. Yeah,
yeah.
it was. He wrote down every single show in the back of my book. You notice there's everything, all the
Hmm.
shows there. 2000.
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
he started that originally. And then the later years when I had my own calendar, so I added on for the rest of the years in that on that thing there. It was great. It took up a lot of pages in the book. It was good. And so he wrote down after every show. He'd ask me how many people were there, what do we get paid, and he had book little notepads. He wrote that all down. He wanted to
Yeah.
know what was going on. Yeah, he was a business guy.
Yeah. Well, and people always label him as being, very cold, very serious, but you see clips and stuff of him, him cutting up some and whatever else. What I mean, did Johnny have a lighter side? Did he have
He
a
had a lighter side, but didn't let it out a lot.
okay. Yeah.
And
So
unfortunately, you know, what happened with me is Joey needed a lot of help, because he had OCD. People in early years
yeah,
didn't realize what it was.
correct.
And
Right.
everybody
Yeah.
thought he was like out of his mind. Come on, Joey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Then later on they figured it out it was OCD. But I had to help him because before the tour, I had to, help him make sure he had everything packed and whatever he needed, medicine stuff. And so I would help him out. And Johnny figured I was favoring him, you know what I mean? And I
Uh,
got very close to him too, because my girlfriend sister was Angela, which is one of Joey's girlfriends. So we got
yep.
very close. We'd go, just hang out at Joey's house and Thanksgiving and stuff like that. So Johnny always figured I was favoring him. So I
Yeah.
didn't have a very tight relationship with Johnny as I had with Joey.
Yeah. Well, and well, at least to me, a big thing. In '93, the Ramones were on an episode of The Simpsons, and again love The Simpsons. I'm a Simpsons fan, but I've always heard that the band was a big Simpsons fan as well, and we're very excited about appearing on the show.
Oh, they
Um,
loved it.
yeah, I mean, The Simpsons to me strikes me as a something that the Ramones would enjoy.
That's a great clip because every time somebody has a birthday, I just load that up on their site.
That's right, very
Say
useful,
happy
isn't
birthday and play this, happy birthday.
it? Yeah, very very useful. Yeah. The final show, right? August 6th, '96, in Hollywood. Was that an emotional day for everybody? I heard they played the show, was done. Everybody kind of just went off.
Well, Johnny just run out of there quickly. Joey hung around with Lemmy and all that, the other band.
Yeah.
The band hung around, Johnny just ran out because he had moved to LA and he's usually he didn't like to hang around after
Yeah.
shows much, period. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
it was like kind of stunning. Earlier they had said they wouldn't break up, and people they didn't, and
yeah.
they had other. But this time we were kind of hoping maybe they get back. But Joey and Johnny decided that was it. Marky was a little pissed off. Because
Yeah.
he wanted to keep on going. CJ could have. He was a young guy, so
He was young. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's a clip of Lemmy there saying, "Can't believe that this is the last show and all that." Says the Ramones.
Yeah.
Flip of him back there,
Yeah.
and he came on stage and sang the last song with them, and they had all the other people, Eddie Vedder and Lars from Rancid came up, and talk about the opposites. I mean, Johnny Ramone became very good friends with Eddie Vedder. Now here's a
Hmm.
staunch Republican, conservative. Eddie
And
Vedder's the liberal, but they didn't
yep.
talk politics. That's what the Ramones. They didn't talk
Yeah.
politics. They kept it separate. They just talked baseball basically, and
Yeah.
they became good big friends. That's why Johnny and Joey could tolerate each other and keep on playing because they realized they had a good thing going there.
Yeah.
They didn't want to break it up. They didn't want to end, getting on stage in front of like a big crowd and making records and stuff like that.
Yeah. What no and again, if you don't maybe you can't speak on this or don't want that's okay. When Joey passed and Johnny didn't attend his funeral, is that just a Johnny thing that he's just or
Yeah.
I mean, or is there something to be read into that with the relationship that Johnny
Well,
didn't feel it was important?
it was
He just
upset that Joey died and stuff. That
Yeah.
but he didn't call him at the hospital or anything or talk to him. He wasn't talking to him. They
Yeah.
kept it separate because Linda was there, and it was tough.
It's weird. Yeah.
Linda had a good relationship with Joey and kept on talking to him on clandestine on the side. Not, Johnny didn't realize how much she actually kept on talking to Joey afterwards,
Yeah. Yeah.
but Johnny just didn't want anything to do with it. I mean, he was very sad about the whole thing, and he said that he was sorry that he passed away, but he wouldn't expect Joey to come to his funeral. That's one of his quotes or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 And there's that magic number that everybody puts out there, right? 2,263 concerts. And you were there the
Listed all in the
entire.
back. Every single show is listed in the back of my
Yeah,
book. So if
absolutely.
you're wondering where you were in 1984, June, you
Yep.
can look it up and oh, look, I went to
Yep.
that. It was there.
Yeah. Yep. And you were there that entire run. So
Well, I
when,
missed a couple of shows in the beginning. Like,
well, sure, right, but more or less. I mean,
yeah.
but so that, I mean, this for 22 years as we spoke was your life, right? The Ramones and this and that. So what led you to finally tell your story with On the Road with Ramones and finally, do the book and help document uh, their career, your career with them? What led to that?
Well, actually, I didn't want to write about because I was good friends with Joey. So I felt I didn't want to expose a lot of stuff in the book that they talk
Mm-hmm.
about Joey.
Mm-hmm.
So when he passed away, it was a little easier for me to do that. And people kept on coming to me, do a book. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Joey had done a solo album on Sanctuary Records.
Yep.
And at the time, Sanctuary had a publishing house too. Good friend of mine, Kevin Patrick. Kevin's a great, he has his own label. He had his own label, Medicine Label, and he's A&R guy for a number of years. He manages Matt and Kim now. But he knew he got Joey to sign on Sanctuary. And then he brought me up to after Joey passed away, brought me out to Sanctuary, and they had a publishing house, and that's how I decided to do the book through Sanctuary Publishing.
Yeah. And again, it's a great book. I mean, several. It's been a few editions now. There's the bonus edition now
Yeah,
with added like what 40 something added
yeah,
pages
40 more
from the
pages.
original.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I updated it like three times.
Yeah.
Because
I
over the
mean, it's
years, when I first put it out, Tommy was alive, Johnny was alive, it was still
yep.
around. I mean,
Yep.
over the
Yep.
years, so I had to keep on adding. And John now Turtle finally, I put up stuff about Arturo in the book. So
Yeah.
the final edition here is the bonus edition with the red Ramones on it. Get that one.
Yep. Yep. And
And
been
it's for bonus
translated
edition.
yeah, been translated what, it's like 7, 8 languages,
Yeah,
something like that.
the earlier version is translated to 7 languages. I didn't get
Yeah.
the one translated yet, but that's the same
Okay.
book. It's 40
Sure.
pages in the
Yeah.
back.
I mean, so and a lot of people, say, hey, this is the definitive book on the Ramones, right? Because this is not somebody from the outside writing. It's someone that was there documenting, like you said, the shows, it's in there, right? This is a great book.
Yeah.
Do you,
I also
it,
try
it,
to
go ahead.
I also try to put in what it's like to be on the road and what it's like to be on the crew
Yeah.
and stuff. So I put in
Yeah.
the crew aspect of it into it. When
Yeah.
people go to a show, they see a band on stage, they don't realize there's a foundation under the band.
Sure.
There's the lighting guy. There's the sound guy. There's the guitar roadie. There's the drum roadie. There's other
Yep.
people. You have a crappy guitar roadie, and the guy's going to be out of tune. A lousy
Yeah.
sound man. He's going to sound bad. The light's
Yep.
going to look bad. So I try to bring that in because being tour manager, sound man, I try to bring that into my, explain to people what it was like underneath. I had the writer in there and stuff like that, what they want in the dressing room and stage plots and stuff like that. Also, I try to bring that whole thing in.
Yeah. Well, and so how, I mean, with the book, with coming on and talking, to people like me and doing interviews and all these things that entails, do you take a pride in helping keep the story alive and help uphold
Well,
your
that's
part of the legacy?
yeah, of course. That's why I'm doing podcasts all over the place.
There you go. Yeah.
I try to keep it alive. I mean, as I said, I'm the only one around now that was
Yeah.
there,
Yeah,
and my
true.
book kind of speaks for it. It's a lot of oral history in the book. A lot of people talking in their book. Some people come to me and said, how'd you say that about?" I said, "I didn't say that. They said that in the book."
Yeah.
That doesn't
Right.
help very much, but it's there's a lot of oral history. Other people, like I interviewed a lot of people.
Yeah. And I mean, we the Ramon, I mean, they're still hugely popular, right? I mean, they're streamed a lot.
Well,
They're
that's the
selling a
thing,
lot of
now,
merchandise.
now it's like people say, Beatles, Stones, Ramones in one voice, and
Yeah,
it
where was
floors
that?
me. I mean, they're huge now. I'll tell this joke. I'm sorry out there. I'll tell it 1,001, 2,000 times. If the Ramones were this big when I was working for them, I would have gotten a big raise. I would have making a lot
Right.
more money. They're so big
Yeah.
now. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. Well, it's
Yeah.
nice to see, but
Yeah.
they're getting their due now. But unfortunately, the four original people are not there to see how
To
big
enjoy
they
it.
are.
Yep. Why? I
What
mean,
a
why do you
shame.
think it is? Why are they probably more relevant now than ever? Is it just because?
You know, people relate to them, their songs. Pe- they were like Johnny Appleseed when they first went out. Johnny planted apples all over the place. When they
Uh,
first came out, they went out to all these places, all these small clubs, countries, and played. And people and kids saw them and say, "Hey, it's not that hard. We don't have to be like Eric Clapton or Ginger Baker or whatever on drums or guitar. Just good songs, adequate on your instrument." And all these kids saw them and started groups.
hmm
Metallica,
hmm
Soundgarden, Rancid, U2, Pearl Jam, all saw the Ramones and
Yep.
inspired them. Something was there. It was the music, it was the simplicity and the tightness, and the whole thing came together in people's minds, and it still does when they hear a Ramones song. You
It
know,
does. I mean, like we said, that debut album, 50 years,
I
and it
mean,
still sounds as, to me, it sounds as relevant and fresh and good when you
what
hear
what
those songs.
what better song for COVID than "I Want to Be Sedated"? That is come, play
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
I mean, yeah, it stands the test of time. So, and again, another thing, if you don't want to, again, if you don't want to speak on it, that's fine. But I want to bring it up. Do you want to speak to any of the recent tension and the legal issues in the Ramones estate with Linda and Mickey?
Well, that's a shame. It's just really a shame. The problem was over the years, Johnny and Joey developed the Ramones Corporation. Dee Dee wasn't involved in it. Tommy wasn't involved in
hmm
it.
hmm
Over the years, Johnny and Joey developed the Ramones Corporation. Joey passed away and gave his corporation his part, his half and 50-50 to
hmm
his mother, Charlotte, who passed away, unfortunately. Beautiful person, Charlotte. We used to go up there with Joey for Thanksgivings and Christmas and stuff like that. So Charlotte passed away and gave it to his brother, Mitch Hyman, Mickey Lee. And Johnny passed away and gave it to Linda. Linda inherited. And unfortunately, Linda and Mickey don't get along very well. That's the problem,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which they could, I wish they would, because they keep on nixing things. They keep on stopping. One would do this. You can't do that. You can do this. So it's a big can of worms. It's a mess. I
Yeah.
tried. The problem with me is I got to be like Switzerland. I got to be in the middle. I got to, I'm friendly with both of them. I try to
Yeah.
do the John Ramone bash here, birthday bash, and I go out and do the Linda Ramone tribute show, which does a terrific tribute show out at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Have you been out to that cemetery?
No, not yet.
Yeah, it's amazing. Dee Dee's
Yeah.
actually buried there, but Johnny's not buried there. His ashes are scattered a little bit there, but his ashes are actually up in his house
Yeah.
in LA. But that statue's become an
Statues.
iconic thing.
It is.
It's a great cemetery. If you ever get a chance, you should visit. It's
Yeah.
a lot of famous
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
buried there. And what's his name from Soundgarden is buried next to
Uh,
Johnny, actually
Chris
buried.
Cornell.
Yeah, he's actually
No.
buried there next to the
Yeah.
statue.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I gotta be like Switzerland, because they want you. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? He said this about me. She said this about him, and I gotta stay in the middle. It's rough. It's very rough. I wish
Yeah.
they actually went to spent all that money in lawyers, suing each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. I mean, do you think will there ever be harmony in the camp? I mean, I
As
don't
of
know
now, the lawsuit. They just settled a lawsuit just
about the
just a couple
yeah
a month or two ago. So they're
Netflix
still at
movie
it.
and stuff,
Yeah,
and
they're still at
I
it.
know, I know.
I wish they
Um,
would. I wish they would become
Me too,
friends
me too. I hope they can find. Yeah, I mean, would benefit if they could find some common ground somehow.
and do a
And
good Ramones movie, and then I'll have Edward Norton play me in the movie.
there you go. All
Have you seen
right,
that the new movie with the Dylan
the
movie?
Dylan movie.
Edward
Yes,
Norton plays Pete
Pete
Seeger.
Seeger, love
He's
it.
my favorite. People say, "We're going to play you." I'll have Edward
I'm
Norton.
a I'm a big Dylan fan. I love Dylan, and
Yeah.
I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah.
And so let's wrap this down. All the years, the miles, the concerts that you were there. Do you what's your biggest takeaway from all your time with the Ramones? Your biggest. I'm not saying it has to be a specific memory, but
Just how big they've become and how iconic they've become, and the logo and all that stuff that have become so iconic. People, when you say the Ramones, most people know Ramones.
everybody knows? Yeah.
Well, not
I mean,
every
if
some
you're
people don't.
yeah,
I talked
well,
to
if
a few people, but that's what amazes me. It's great, and I'm happy that I was able to be part of that, and I guess I'm happy that I contributed to that.
yeah,
I
I mean,
kept
it's
them on
got
the road for all those years. I actually drew up the itineraries and had them printed up. They hand made those on my computer and stuff, and
yeah.
I picked the hotels specifically for budget and stuff. So I really helped them stay alive on the road and make the money.
It's got to be a unique position from your part in it when if you're out and about and you see someone wearing a Ramones t-shirt or see a Ramones t-shirt in a store or whatever. I mean, almost a surreal feeling, even to this day, probably to see
Yeah,
that.
I carry
And
these little cards around with me in
oh,
my
you get
pocket, and
if you
so I
see
see
someone,
somebody and I hand them hey, look, you like the Ramones here, and it's
check the book out.
pick up the book. It fits right in the pocket there.
There you go. That's wise. That's why you were the guy running the show. That's why you were always thinking. Oh, well, hey, Monty, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you doing this with me and working with me. I'd like to, maybe do some follow up in the future, maybe on a specific topic or something,
Yeah.
if something comes up. But for those out there, right, your book's available everywhere, anywhere they can purchase a book.
Yeah,
Your book's there.
Amazon.com.
Right?
That's
Yep.
the main place for it, really.
Yep. So go check it out.
Worldwide.
Again, it's called On the Road with the Ramones. Monte A Melnick. But tell me about really quick about Frank Meyer, who helped you with the book.
Oh, that was terrific. Frank's a great person. Well, initially when I came in, I said, I'm not really a writer. I'm not a writer. They said, well, bring us some ghostwriters. So they suggested a bunch of people. And Frank popped up, and he's a terrific Ramones fan, great musician, Street Walking Cheetahs. He's working with Fear now. He's working with Dick Manitoba, and a huge Ramones fan. And he did such a great job. I met him, and I decided to give him co-writing instead of just a ghostwriter,
Good deal.
And
Yeah.
brought him in. And we spent like a couple of months working on going through I had a room full of stuff.
Yeah.
Merch, stuff in the room there, posters stuff. We went through the whole thing. Terrific guy, wonderful writer. Helped him a lot. He's out there now. You should go see him in Fear and Street Walking Cheetahs and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, if you're going to pick the book and you look it up, make sure to look for that bonus edition.
Right.
And get those 41 extra pages.
Red Ramones on it.
And then, yep, the Red Ramones. It's like I said, it's on Amazon, easy to find. If you look up Ramones in book, it comes up right up at the top. So, but what is the best way, Monty, for people to follow you?
Well, I'm on
to keep track of
Instagram,
you?
Monte A. Melnick, or Facebook, Monte A. Melnick. There's 2 sites.
Gotcha. All right. Well, there you go. Because you never know what'll pop up in the future for Monty and his thing. Like I said, maybe someday we'll get some harmony and get to see Ed Norton play Monty in a movie.
Yeah,
Never know.
Put out a good Ramones movie. That'll be interesting. It's really difficult because the feuding factions, but to get really anything done with the Ramones, because one thing they both have to agree upon.
Yeah, and you're getting 2 opinions and 2 sides of something. But who knows?
I'm out there. Anybody want to do a movie with my book? I'm open. Come see me.
It would be great.
I'll try.
It would be great, especially if Ed Norton's available.
Edward Norton.
Edward Norton. I'm sorry. Yeah, Edward Norton.
Ed Norton is Jackie Gleason.
That's true. There you go. All right. Well, once again, Monty, thank you for coming on. Let me talk to you and stay in touch. And like I said, as I venture into this and if things get rolling, maybe I'll talk to you again about something more specific.
It's a pleasure. I had a good time. And gabba gabba hey out there for everybody.
Hey, Bruiser buddies. I want you to listen to Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty. Every week, he has the roughest and toughest interviews in the podcast world today with the best guests you could ask for. There's no bums on this show. Let Dave Dynasty be your podcasting tag team partner and listen to Wrestling Nostalgia while drinking beer, smoking cigars, and busting heads. Just look it up on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe today, because the Bruiser said so.
All right. And thank you to Monte A Melnick for joining me here on the Pinhead Pod. What a great premiere guest. I mean, probably the perfect premiere guest. As like I said, Monty was there for pretty much the entire Ramones run. He was always there, always a part of the camp, has so many insights and stories, and he will be back on the podcast in the future. Now, next episode, which will be available on March 1st, I will have my guest, Little Matt Loya, former guitar tech for Johnny Ramone for many years. Again, that episode will be available on March 1st. Thank you to all of you for listening and following, downloading the episode, and your support. Be sure to tell all your friends and fellow Ramones fans about the podcast and help us grow. Be sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform, plus leave a rating and review and help us in that way. Also, make sure you follow us on all those social media platforms. We're on pretty much all of them. Just search for Pinhead Pod. Be sure you share our posts and help our podcast audience grow. You can also give us feedback, suggestions, tell us your Ramones stories, etc. on those platforms. We welcome all interactions from fellow Ramones fans. That is it for this premiere episode, the very first. Again, we will be back with our second episode on March 1st, so make sure you subscribe to not miss that. Until then, Ramones fans, be good, be safe, and gabba gabba hey.